And so we want to welcome all of you that are with us right now for this broadcast, for this. Gil Brazard. Gil, great to have you with us tonight. We're live. We've got a large crowd in here tonight.
It's always a pleasure, Paul.
Amen.
Glad to be here.
Great to have you, really are. And folks, I just interviewed Gil for the webinar. It's phenomenal. He dropped some bombs in this interview, some fresh information with some great graphics and PDF. You'll really want to watch the webinar with Gil Brazard. Really help you. Some of you have been wondering about the timeline. You've been wondering about what the effects on the earth are going to be. And let's just start there, Gil, with the volcanoes, because look, Planet X, there's no question, Planet 7X that you call it, it's affecting the volcanism, isn't it? I mean, isn't that what we're seeing?
Without a doubt. Today, I think we hit a record of 57 active spewing lava volcanoes. 57. And there's another 10 or 12 that are about to erupt that they're very, very concerned about.
I mean, this is incredible, folks. How do you have 57 volcanoes that are currently going off right now with another 12 looking like they're very, very possible and could happen within the year? Are you saying that, Gil?
Probably so, yes. The way that they're presently popping, yes, I would say that if they're showing any type of misactivity, definitely before the planet will arrive, whenever it does, they will definitely go off. So,
wow,
be living by any type of volcano of any type that's showing any type of activity, tremble, some of the quakes around it are indicators that it's actively pushing lava.
So,
towards the surface.
And that's because and Planet 7X, nobody has seen it yet. From what I mean, people are seeing certain things in the sky.
Sightings.
Yeah, no valid sightings.
Well, there are some people that have seen it. Yeah, that probably the Vatican have seen it. People, there's people with our government that had telescopes, and even the Born and Pioneer probes told them where to look, because it was the sensors that triangle the position of it. So there are a few people who have seen it, but it's not in the public realm. There's nothing. What you're seeing is a bunch of clickbait, which are normal anomalies, whether it's cameras or whether it's streams of plasma, you name it. It's different. There's different anomalies that would cause things to appear. Even sometimes it's people's sensors off their camera, if it's red and green, which are bouncing off the glass. Anytime you take a camera and point it to an extremely bright light, you're going to end up with lens flares and other situations that you normally don't see. But that's an effect of the bright light on the sensors. But there's no valid sightings at the moment. We have 200,000 or 300,000 astronomers globally that would love to be taking pictures and posting them. It won't happen until after the internet is down, that you're gonna, that people will have actual astronomers seeing it then. So I would,
yeah,
we'll just have to see how it turns out here in the near future.
All right. Hang on, Gil, 1 second. Folks, real quick shout out for noblegoldinvestment.com. That's www.noblegoldinvestment.com. Your 401k, your IRA, you need to look at that, because the stock market is very volatile right now, very volatile. And they're talking about this digital dollar, and they're talking about the great reset. I think, matter of fact, Hillary Clinton just from the Clinton Foundation just withdrew $1.8 billion worth of gold out of England and had it transferred to America. Why in the world is she afraid of that? What is she concerned about? Well, I think this global reset's about ready to happen, and she's trying to get her hands on all precious metals you can. Again, go to noblegoldinvestment.com. That's www.noblegoldinvestment.com. All right. Gil, you've got this incredible, you're a great astronomer yourself, and you've dug deep into the records. You've studied some of the ancient writings on Joshua's longest day, and you said something today earlier, and I didn't know, and that is that there was a double Sabbath. Can you help us understand how did the sun stay up for 24 hours in Joshua's longest day? Did Planet X cause this when it went by so many years ago?
Yes, I have an artifact now. It's from Egypt. It was on the ceiling of a tomb, and what it shows us, it gives us the exact date that this object crossed, and it caused a 12-hour delay, and that was the night just before Yeshua rose from the grave. He rose in the morning hours. And this was the prior night was a Sabbath night, a weekly Sabbath, which was Saturday. And that night was twice as long. Matter of fact, there's an indicator even in the New Testament that the Sabbath for that night is pluralized. It has an S on it. And the rabbis have speculated what their text is saying, that it was a double Sabbath, and they really couldn't figure this out. And now we know what it is. That night was 12 hours longer, and causing that Sabbath night, it's a double Sabbath. That's what they would have called it in ancient times. And we have proof of it now.
And so, you're saying it's because the earth stopped spinning. You're saying the earth stopped spinning during Joshua's longest day. It was during the daytime. And when Yeshua rose from the dead, it was at the nighttime. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. Because remember, at any given time, earth is always, half of it is in the dark and half of it is in the daylight at any given time. So when the earth stops, both sides of the earth are affected, So this causes, you will have one half the earth where it has 12 extra hours of darkness, and the other side will have 12 extra hours of daylight. That was also documented during Joshua's long day by the Asian astronomers. They said they had 12 extra hours of nighttime. So this phenomenon can only happen when Earth enters the tail of a comet, and a comet's tail is plasma, not ice particles. This is the latest physicist statement, which was proven out in an actual event that God created for us right here in space when the comet Siding Springs passed by Mars. It gave us a clear example that there was a discharge of energy between the comet and the planet. It lit up Mars completely, just like a light bulb, like a flash. And this was a small comet, very small. That shows the tail of a comet is charged particle, plasma. And that was a lightning bolt, basically, that jumped to the planet, but it was in such a way it lit up the entire planet. Well, Mars is about 90% the size of Earth or so. And the comet that we're saying is coming, you see, this is actually a planet-sized comet, and chances are it's larger than Earth, slightly. This is going to be extremely severe. We have records in matter of fact, the eye of the Sahara in Africa. That's a plasma strike. It's 30 miles across.
Yep.
That's an extremely large lightning bolt, and that tells us we're dealing with a planet-sized object that had to be a small comet would not have made such a strike.
Gil, I'm calling you on the phone because we're having trouble with the audio and also the videos cutting in and out. I'd like to get you on the phone. I think I can get a better sound.
right, Paul, you got me?
I think that's better. Gil, you there?
Yeah.
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I think that's better. Go ahead.
There's a slight delay, but I think we can work through it.
Okay. All right, Gil. Now, also, let's talk about timelines. I mean, you have to understand, there's 2,300 people listening right now that are gaining in steam. People are wondering how much longer is it going to take for Planet X to get to its closest approach, and how intense, what will happen to the Earth during that process? Is it like I mean, are we going to see just unbelievable extreme weather conditions of all kinds? Tell us what it means.
All right, so let's take the first part of the question. The only way we'll know the arrival is from a sighting. Once we have the original sighting, confirmed, we can calculate from its position where and when it would arrive in the future. So we're still looking for that verification. It has to be on the ecliptic for Earth's planetary plane for us to have a double meteor shower. It can't be any other place. And the effects that Earth is suffering under, as well as our other planets, tells us that it is close, that it's not outside our solar system. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having these extreme effects. Remember, it is warping the orbits of asteroids right next to Earth. It can't be outside our solar system. It's impossible for that effect to be that local. The window of time that I gave was from 2012 to roughly 2030. But within that window, there's certain things that the Bible talks about that we're looking for. The moon at the foot of Virgo is an indicator. So
now that was the
right now, the natural position of the moon at the foot of Virgo has passed us. Now we're looking for a delay in the moon's orbital path being delayed by 12 hours, just exactly like the Earth is also happening. It is going to slow down on its rotation and its forward speed by 12 hours. So that gives us one more possibility, and it might be this next year in 2022 in April.
What?
But
okay, so you're saying you don't have a crystal ball, but you're saying it's possible that in April of 2022, it may be at its closest approach, or may it be at its beginning approach?
Every year, remember, the moon has a tilted orbit, okay? And that orbit is traveling around Earth also every 18.6 years. It makes one full revolution around. It doesn't stay at the foot of Virgo for very long.
And you're making reference. You're making reference now to the Revelation 12 sign that we had, that we saw happen back in September 23rd, 2017. You're saying it's that Planet X is going to enter into that the foot of Virgo, the woman's foot?
What I'm saying is that it's not a September event.
Okay.
Because remember Elijah and Moses and all of our past records of the actual arrival of Planet X in the past, the artifacts tell us it's at the end of March or it's the beginning of April is where it's passing. It's not passing Earth's orbit. It's not crossing Earth's orbit in September. It's impossible for it to. The past history shows us this. Think of it like a train on a track. The track doesn't change. The train may arrive late or early, but the track doesn't change.
Right. I see.
This has to be a March, April event again.
So that's why you're saying March, April of 2022 is a possibility. You're not saying it's a definite, but you're saying it is a possibility because the track's been laid. The question is, how fast is this binary system? How fast is it traveling? And you're saying it's a comet. Am I right, Gil?
Correct. A planet-sized comet. And keep in mind, every year that goes by without us seeing it, it has to slow down an additional 12 hours to bring it at the foot of Virgo. We only have a 12-hour model in the Bible with Yeshua as well as Joshua's long day. We don't have a 24-hour delay of the moon and the Earth rotation. So if we stick with the data that the Bible has given us, we can only go this one more time. That's 12 hours. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but just that I don't have any numbers to justify it.
And folks,
that's the problem we have, right?
Yeah. Well, folks, listen, this is Gil Brizard. He is the leading expert as it relates to this. I want to say this, Gil. You have studied it. You've studied the Egyptian records, the book, the Torah, some of the records from the rabbis, some of the Asian information, the Peruvians, the Mayans have talked about it. All of this stuff about how this planet, this huge comet, which is in the Bible, it's bringing a huge debris field, and we're going to go through that field. We're going to have a meteor storm of a biblical proportion, and before that happens, the earth is going to it's going to reel and rock like a drunken man. Yeshua said, "For there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves are roaring." Okay, we had 14 earthquakes today in Texas, Gil. In Texas. What's going on?
Well, let me just bring back, let me give you another math problem we have here. Remember where it says, the generation that saw Israel formed shall not die out before all is fulfilled?
Yes. The fig tree.
So that brings us up to the rapture. Okay, well, I see it at the end of the Great Tribulation, which is 3.5 years from the arrival of this. Because this planet starts the Great Tribulation. So if you add the 3.5 years and you go with what a bar mitzvah for a Hebrew child at age 13 is when he becomes of age of being a witness. Okay. So in 1948, if you add 13 years to that, up to 2022 plus the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, guess what that generation, the Holocaust generation, is going to be now? They're going to be 90 years old.
Remember what the Bible tells us a generation is either 80 and whether or not they have good health, they could go up to 90. Well, we're reaching the 90-year mark.
So you're saying this is this is the generation. Jesus said, of course, Yeshua said this, when you see the leaves on the fig tree become tender, summer is nigh. He said, this generation shall not pass away till they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. Well, we also know that Jesus just told us, as I was quoting there, Matthew in Luke 21. There's will be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves will be roaring. That means a lot of catastrophic events going on. And then it says, then men's hearts will fail them for fear, for looking on those things coming on the earth. So are you saying, Gil, that Planet X is going to bring that fear? The things that's going to be happening, that they're going to see the sign of this thing, and people are going to drop dead out of fear. Is that right?
Men's hearts shall fail for what they anticipate.
Yeah.
Remember, without Earth slowing down in its forward speed and its rotation, you would have a head-on collision with the planet. But it's impossible with the physics that God put in place for the two planets to actually collide. Because the tail of the comet will automatically slow us down. But the astronomers have the wrong physics. So they will anticipate that there's no slowing down of Earth, and they will anticipate a head-on collision, and their hearts will fail for what they anticipate. The Bible tells us this.
Wow. So this is no doubt, folks. Gil Brazard is with us. Mike Around the World is going to join us in a few moments. Doubleheader tonight. 7X Planet. Listen, climate chaos. The Climate Chaos webinar starts next Friday. I can't tell you how important this will be. Such an important webinar because the information that's coming from all the speakers is unbelievable. I mean, Gil shared with me some stuff that I can't say here that will be on the webinar. That's going to it's going to mess you up, because I don't think, Gil, people know that the end is near. I mean, Gil, the end is near, and we need to be ready, shouldn't we?
But the Bible tells us that people will still be partying and marrying and doing everything else just like they normally do. That, let's see, evil will be considered good and good is evil. Aren't we seeing that in the news?
Yeah. Every day. It's getting worse, Gil. Yes. It's getting worse. So
something that would be simple common sense for them not to do, but yet they're doing it, and they say it is good. It's terrible.
Now let's talk about something else here before you go, and that's obvious that you said, and I think Mike from the World has said this, and probably many others, that there's no way they can tell us just how soon this thing's going to get here. If, for instance, if they know that the debris field, we have a true shot at being hit with a deep impact. But are they cloaking this thing already? Or, I mean, you feel like the Vatican has already seen it. The Vatican, some of these observatories have already seen Planet X, but they're hiding it from the amateurs. Do you think that's possible?
Remember when Reagan put Star Wars up? It was lasers, satellites.
Yep.
And remember his speech to the UN? If we had an alien threat, it's not little green men he was talking about. If we had an alien threat, that we put all our differences aside and come together to solve the alien threat. This planet, this comet coming approaching Earth. And so that's why he was telling them, don't worry, in space, this is to help us. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot more severe. Now, to an object, they're trying to save a 280 trillion economy. So people can still have somewhat of a job or some semblance of it. So I was expecting a shutdown of the economy before the planet arrives. And I also expect a digital economy for the currency where it's asset backed before the planet arrives. We're at that verge right now.
Yes, we are.
And switching over to digital. Well, this is an indicator because they're not going to go on the ground with fiat currency. They're going to go with something that's asset backed. So, And then we said that we would see military streets. Well, in certain streets, the military constantly on the streets. Today, we see it all over our capital. We have the. It's there. It's self-evident. Try to look for it. I mean, just open. You can see this.
You really can, folks. You really can. Gil, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you so much. We've really enjoyed it, and this is great information. And, of course, your presentation on the webinar for Climate Chaos is extraordinary. Tremendous graphics, information, and a PDF that people can download for free with all this information. It's really remarkable. And we appreciate it greatly.
You need to study and look at this series, because we have all the signs of approach planet, and we have all the signs of the Bible as well. It's becoming together. They're going to merge.
Amen. It's coming, folks. It's coming fast. Gil, I'll be talking to you again. Appreciate it very much tonight. And may the Lord bless you and keep up the good work, brother.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Pastor Paul, God bless you, brother. You sound good tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm working hard at it. I can tell you that I'm 34 treatments I have done, a lot of therapy on speech and physical therapy, and a lot of cognitive work I've had to do. And so I feel better.
That's good. That'd be good for all of us, some cognitive exercise.
Cognitive exercise while 33 feet underwater, breathing 100% oxygen. It's kind of this new technology, and they've seen some great results from it, but I'm only the 167th person to be tested with this. So, I'm a test myself. We'll see how this works.
But the Lord has the outcome for you.
Amen.
He's got it for you.
All right, Mike. Hey, we're just about ready for Climate Chaos next week. I got to film you next week. It's going to be a big one. So talk to us here. Well, first of all, Mike, before we get into that, can we talk about Russia and Ukraine? Because there's something going on here. I even got a side note that there was even a Russian fired some shells into Ukraine. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I know there's a lot going on. What do you know, Mike?
Well, there's a lot of talks tonight with that and with Israel, obviously. So, that's one of those long-durational types of involvements they're going to have. But ultimately, Russia will not back down from taking Ukraine. They will not. The last time with U.S. intervention, that was only a stall, but we saw the hostilities that Russia was willing to evoke or press upon the Ukraine with, aircraft being shot down and so forth. So they have the wherewithal to do it, and it's only a matter of time until they do. On the back end of that, with Russia's continued positioning, they have no option, it seems. They're going to do it to muster their own country for survivability of their own country. They're going to do it. So it's one of those unfortunate things, and ultimately this dispute is going to be, nobody can talk it out. It's not going to be done by diplomacy. It's going to be overcome by either side by sheer force.
So the Biden administration did put some heavy sanctions on Russia yesterday, and including 8 of their oligarchs. And I guess these were some of the most severe sanctions we've ever put on Russia. And and supposedly it's because of Russia interference in the 2020 election. Maybe some of the attacks on some other stuff. Is there something here, Mike, or is our administration reacting more aggressive than anticipated?
Well, part of the Russia sanctions, you have your public optics, which, of course, everybody understands cyber attacks and involvement with elections. That's everybody's familiar with that, so naturally they would state that. But behind the scenes, Russia is Russia, if you can think of Russia as just like this country, we have individuals in this country that do not always do what they're told. And so inside of Russia, although it used to be run with a fist of iron, there are elements within Russia that somewhat operate on their own. Now, through Russia's patriotism, they're not going to turn their own people in, but you still have very powerful and active elements within Russia that sometimes they'll do things on their own, and other countries bear the consequence of their activities. And so President Putin is not going to diminish any patriotism in his country by calling these sections out. So he kind of covers for them, and they can absorb the sanctions. You know, they've done this before. In fact, they've been doing this for a long time. Biden, on the other hand, is very Biden is inclusive as far as some of the decisions he makes. So he likes to involve a lot of thinkers into every move he makes, and they, through advisements, he ultimately does what he does. But his reaction was to appease certain court documents and findings and some of the latest published reports regarding cybersecurity in the U.S. And so, but Russia's not the only one. We're going to see China on the list next. And if you notice, China has been out of the news topic for a while now. It's because we have to recover certain portions of trade with China first, and then we'll slap on the handcuffs. They do this so that all the countries understand we have our public faces, we have our operational faces, but behind the scenes, you know, they really can't, one country is not going to bend to the society of another because of that country's patriotism or the people's loyalty to that country. For example, China, it was about 7 years ago, they banned all Western media from, you know, showing in China. They did this to muster culture back into China. And on occasion, you'll see every single country do this. They will muster their own specific cultures. Now, this becomes a point of great disagreement also, because at the UN, and of course with other tables, other talks, these guys, they have some bitter disputes, faith disputes. Their ideologies don't quite get together on that base scale, which will leak out into hostilities sooner or later. Not because of the presidents of those countries, but because of the elements within the country. That's going to be, you know, one of the triggers in this new war that we're in. I would say already that if people just look around, we're in a war already. It's just not a conventional war. It's a very different war, and it will, sooner or later, it will spill over into many different areas. And now that for example, we've the world, they say, has lost a historical peace and royalty. You're going to see that gap filled with very aggressive individuals. When the king died, right? And so somebody's going to fill his place with aggressiveness. In fact, you're going to notice a lot of aggression from a lot of places. Israel is going to start operating more and more on its own. Israel only backs down to appease the U.S. Because they still need, they think they need, they really don't, but they still need some of the assets that the U.S. Offers.
Right.
But that's going to, 2 months from now, that'll be, that won't exist, to be honest with you, because Israel right now is becoming one of the highest exporters of just some real good commodities that anybody's ever seen. And these guys, you know, they're raking up, but they still need support elements around them, and they really can't trust who they have around them, save for Russia. They do a lot of talks with Russia, and this is going to become a contention point between the U.S. and them. You know what bothers me, though?
What's
with
that?
all the advancements in the Middle East, and with Russia being the way it is, Putin's been in there. Putin offers stability because he can talk to all the factions within within Russia.
Right.
If something were to happen to Putin, I'm telling you, things would fall apart all over the world, because Putin is somewhat level-headed. He knows how to communicate with most of the world. He really does.
He does.
If he's not there, you're going to have powerful, aggressive people take positions they shouldn't have, and their decision is going to be the decision. At that point, they're not going to play around. The same sentiment could be said for Israel itself. Benjamin Netanyahu, believe it or not, has held Israel back from entering into many wars. I mean, many wars. I fear that if he's out of office, gone, right?
Yep.
Somebody's going to get in there with an appeasement attitude. And then at that point, they're going to be infiltrated, and it's going to be over from there. Now, that seems like that wouldn't be too bad. It is, because they have a lot of updated equipment. I know people don't understand some of the updated aircraft, some of the updated ships, because all you see on the news are ancient vessels. Even the Raptors, ancient. That's ancient. There's real tech out there, and if this stuff falls into the wrong hands, that same day half this earth could be destroyed. Not through nuclear weapons either. That is not the worst weapon. A nuclear weapon now is like a BB gun compared to what's actually out there. So
what? Whoa! Time.
Very volatile.
No, Mike, no. I mean, the nukes are bad. I mean, the nukes are really, really bad. Are you? Okay. Are we talking laser? We could talk some kind of microwavable scalding people or chemical warfare. What are you talking about?
No. They have effective weapons. Nuclear weapons. During the Cold War, they knew they needed powerful alternatives, right? That they could actually, the greatest weapon you could ever have is a weapon that you could launch, right? Destroy your enemy, but keep all of its resources and sustain the earth while doing so. They can't do that with a nuclear weapon. Since the development of nuclear weapons, and actually since Reagan, during that space program, defending Earth, that's when CERN, actually the work in CERN really stepped up, and plenty of things were found about the dark realm, they call it. They call it the anti or dark realm. They've been harnessing things from the dark realm for a long time, and so they have weapons based upon that technology. Lasers, that's ancient, believe it or not. It's just not in the public domain. If they wanted to right now, air travel, all these things could be extinct. The only problem with that is it would mess with the economy the way it is now. And believe me, they're at a breakneck pace trying to change the entire economy, because the economy stops technology from coming forward. For example, if any type of craft, if it were ever revealed that the U.S. or Russia, China, anybody had a craft that did not, it kind of defied physics, right? Like gravity and things like that. Anti-gravity is what people call. If they found this out, it would only be a matter of a day before somebody said, wait a minute, if you can defy gravity, why are we using standard generators? Why do we use turbines? Everybody could have a coffee cup sized device that would power their homes forever. Why are we paying power? And that would cause a breakdown in our social structure. So that's why they don't let certain things come forward, because it would affect us. The other part of that is some folks are terrified of technology. Recently, people saw a very old device, the police dog, right? It's a very old device in New York City. And they started freaking out about this old dog. They didn't know. I heard one person saying the kids ran up to it and petted the thing, right? So what is it? They don't understand technology, and they're wooed and awed by things that have been created, perfected a long time ago. And we live in the world of artificial intelligence, right? I don't think people really understand what world they live in, because I would say at least 65% of what a person sees on television is not real. It's not real anymore. Half the folks people talk to on the phone, they're not real, especially when you call one of these corporations. Sure. There was an article published for an entire year. A major company, I'm not going to mention it, but it's published, was using artificial intelligence for their customer service. People engaged with the computers with that, artificial intelligence for an entire year, and not one person could ever make a distinction, because it will engage just like you and I. The only difference is it's able to make changes with everybody else at the same time as talking to you, so it can engage everybody at the same time. So that makes a difference. Anyway, that happened, and we're further along. We're at least from 2015. I can almost say we're about 75 years ahead of ourselves since 2015.
So, yeah, you're right. We got machines talking to us. We have machines talking to each other. We have AI making new decisions and telling other AI, and that AI responding to the other AI with no more human interaction. Mike, this is going on right now. It's going on in space. It's going on in military components. It's going on in corporate America. And so we're being slowly removed. The human race looks like we're slowly become less and less necessary to manage this planet. Is that really happening?
You said it, because basically that's what humanity does. We manage things. We've automated production, right? We've automated production, so we don't actually go out there with shovels and dig things anymore, right? We have machines to do this. Many of those machines are automated. We have automated factories and everything else. So, but humanity is coordinating all the management and the upkeep and the maintenance, right?
Yeah.
They could take that out of the loop right now if they wanted to. They do keep, in fact, even in the service, the numbers are depleting. As far as it used to be, one guy would have one job, and that was only back in the 90s. Now it's one guy. Really, his job description covers multiple disciplines because we're moving all this excess labor force. Now, with this labor force that wants to be hired for a job, there are no jobs to hire everybody in the labor force because we don't have a good labor force. We have a negotiating force. In other words, when people get jobs, it's either they're doing manual labor like in stores or in restaurants, right?
Right.
Or possibly moving some boxes around because that small company can't afford a robot. But the major money is being made by managing assets that are automated from start to finish.
Right.
So the management portion is being taken out by smart business systems, right? So,
right.
That number is going to deplete, which is why they're changing the entirety of the economic system. So our economy is changing fast. It will not be based right now is different than what people think it is, right? We're using redundancy with banking and all that's redundant. They already have the devices, and the banks are now operating on the back end with brand new technology that links them up with everybody else. In about another 3 months, I believe, every agency will be flawlessly connected to each other. So if you go into a store and buy something, it's going to show up on the unemployment system as far as how much you buy. Statistics will be generated, your 4D profile updated. They have your bone, skin, a composite of you electronically. That's updated right now about every 15, 16 hours. Imagine that. So everybody's printed over the body. We live in a digital world people can't see. And because they can't see it, they don't complain. Because they don't complain, there's no real accountability of it.
It really is. And folks, this is Mike from the World joining us tonight. Of course, Climate Chaos webinar is next Friday. It's upon us. Do you have your ticket? What? I mean, and after listening to Gil Broussard tonight, he's saying that this thing could be upon us, and we're talking about Planet X, not going to hit us. This binary system could be going by as early as April of 2022. I'm going to ask Mike about that. Let's go there now. Mike, I don't know if you know the timeline. I don't know if anybody knows the timeline. And Gil Broussard does not have a crystal ball, and he said that. But according to indications, mathematical indications, and the way that we just had another fragment of an asteroid break off and go over my house, basically from where I'm at to Miami, lit up the sky. It's happening everywhere, as you've told us it would. We're dealing with this huge cyclones off the charts. We're 57 volcanoes are right now erupting. It's an all-time record on the Earth. 14 earthquakes in Texas today. Some of them over 3. Mike, is it possible that Planet X could be going past us within a year?
Sure it is. Sure. I'll say this. My hat's off to all those guys who researched this, because I know they're doing it by in a spectroscopic way. They don't have everything they have to do, especially like folks like Gil Broussard and everything. They're extracting this information from hard work, study, research, and calculations without the benefit of having actual eyes on it. So they have to depend on what they can see optically. So they can do some photometric measurements. So they can then calculate time and so on and so forth. So my hat's off. Having said that, there's a lot that's just not going to be told. It will never be told. I'll put it that way. But there's no need, because optically, people are going to see quite a bit. It's important that this topic of Planet X continue. I'll tell you why. Okay. The conditions we're about to have with I'm going to call it a binary system coming by, is something that is known and observed, and the effects are observed. However, we've not observed that being in the middle of it. The object in question is one of a few. It's just not one, it's one of a few. And there are perturbers out there, more than one. But the conditions these things will cause will be unlivable for most people. Meaning, this earth has been blessed. It has. It's been blessed. Even with the flood, it's been blessed, because the earth still remains and people still remain. But I'm always, the more I've seen, the more I've been exposed to, the more the statement when Jesus said the time that we live in right now, the time where things get really bad, there was no other time like it in history or would ever be again. That's a huge statement. That means everything is underestimated, right? Right. Everything is underestimated. He also said there's also an inclination, both scientifically and biblically, that time is not going to be on the side of man as far as calculations. So, for example, suppose somebody does have eyes on what's happening in the celestial, right? Right. They're going to calculate based on photometric measurements, and they're going to try and extract some type of a orbit and Kepler's laws. They're going to extract everything they can with celestial mechanics. Take a good time of when that thing's going to be here. That's good optically, but I tell you, the moment we see it, it is my firm belief that the moment we see it, we're going to be in bad shape. Meaning, by the time we see it, people are just not going to be faring well.
Is it too late? I mean, are you saying that by the time we see it, it's too late?
Yeah, I would say something just like that. Here's why. Celestial mechanics used to be pretty solid, right? Used to be pretty solid. But there are problems that have been noted since even 2017. We know that, for example, in our solar system, the sun's mass, the mass of a star is extracted in binary systems and calculated specifically in binary systems. They can extract the mass of the sun. We have a problem in our solar system after reevaluating all the specific orbits. I mean, their path, the planet's movements, and everything, right? In not a simulation, but through observation. When they went back and recalculated, something's wrong with our sun's mass. It's not all there. The sun should be much stronger than what it is, and it is not.
What is it at?
The only way you can have an offset mass, right? The mass of the sun is not all the way there based upon all the movements of the planets. The only way this could happen is if the second sun is taking up the rest of that mass. Okay. Because both masses have to equal, right? And through celestial mechanics, Kepler's laws, through any kind of laws you want to run, through computer simulations, calculations, CERN finally got out some of the quantum data. It verified everything. The mass of the sun is not there. It's just not there.
So it's being. Are you saying that the big star? Okay, you got a binary system. Okay, and that's what keeps the balance of the solar system. You're saying that this big sun going by is pulling and sucking our sun dry, or pulling its helium out of it.
Well, what I'm saying is that think of it like this. Think of a seesaw, right? Okay. Imagine you had a 900-pound guy on one side of the seesaw, right? And the seesaw is level and straight, but you don't see anybody on the other side, right? this big guy. Well, the seesaw itself weighs, let's say, 40 pounds. But the other guy at the end of the other end is like 900 pounds. There's no way he should be in the air, should he?
No.
He should be on the ground because there's no one to counterbalance him.
Right.
That's our solar system. That's how our solar system operates right now, which means there's something on the other end, right? Because that same 900-pound guy on a seesaw can be offset by a little baby if the baby is sitting out far enough, right? So the mass of the sun, here's something amazing happens when you add a secondary star through simulations. You ready? When you add the secondary star, the perturbations, some of the warped orbits that are not held by inertia with Uranus are corrected, right? They're accounted for. The asteroid belt and its present day warping is accounted for. Everything is accounted for. They did this and they went all the way back to year 0 and it's accounted for, right? Meaning there's something out there. So that being said, everything is pointing to we have an inbound, not just a little tiny, it's part of a larger system. Now, here's the odd part. Through tracking or through study binary systems, they found something out. It's not a permanent track. They never rotate around each other the same way every single time. They found out that in some cases, one of the binary stars, one of the sister stars, would come around the central star. It would do that and be millions of miles out. Let's just say trillions of miles out, right?
Okay. I'm
going to give you a comparison. But then the next time it passed, it would be, millions of miles out. The next time it passed, it would be billions of miles out. The next time it passed, it would be, a couple millions of miles out. So that means that the orbits, right, how they orbit changes every time they pass. Every time they pass, it is not a static system. It is a dynamic system. It changes, right? It changes. So that means through observation is going to be one of the sure ways to determine how bad a shape we're in. But it also means this. It means that any previous calculations can be off big time. So in fact, because they're moving the way they're moving, we could have some improbabilities no one accounted for, meaning this thing could show up and possibly we wouldn't get all of what we're thinking we're going to get before it showed up, but it would still devastate us, right? It could be worse or it could be easier. But we know in the Bible it says it's going to be the worst it ever was, which kind of gives me an idea that it may pass at its closest point this time, which means its possibility has never been this close. The second sun has never been this close ever, right? So that will change everything in the solar system. Now, we're not just talking about one of its orbiting bodies. We're talking about the star itself. If it gets close to us, the biggest sign we're going to have is in the sun. That's going to be our biggest sign, is in the sun.
So that's why Jesus said that there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, distress of nations, perplexity, sea and the waves will be roaring. Men's hearts are going to fail them for fear, for looking after those things that are coming upon the earth, for the power of heavens shall be shaken. Then we're going to see the Son of Man. Now, that's one scripture, but we also know it talks about that there's going to be a great tribulation since the beginning of the world has ever been. It talks also about the fact that there's going to be rain on one city and not the other two, and people will have to flee into this one. It talks about there's going to be famines, droughts, earthquakes in different places, pestilence, diseases and plagues, wars and rumors of wars. So basically what you're saying, Mike, we don't know the exact track of this thing, because let's say the orbit's like this, or maybe the next time it's like this, the next time it's like this, and how close it comes to us varies. And apparently the condition of mankind is mirrored with the closeness of this planet. It's like God is deciding where to sling it based on how we're reacting. I mean, is that possible?
Well, Pastor Paul, that's the other part. The other part that I am just on that part. Here it is. Sometimes with science, with calculations, sometimes with research and observation, we forget about the power of the living God. Okay, we forget his power. We put him in a box, and we say, "Well, he hasn't done this, so he probably won't do this." Some people even say in their hearts, "Well, he's not going to do A or B." That's wrong. See, because we know, I know personally, I know that thousands of people know that certain things have been stopped, and just how can a rock, right? How can a close call, right, head straight for the Earth, pass the ISS, make a 90-degree turn, and stop and go right back out? We're not talking about a craft. We're talking about a rock.
What?
Right?
No!
How can other things in the atmosphere, things under the sea, how can a ship, how can a naval ship, right, have a hole in it? And what did it have? It had a hole in on a port side. It was a big crack. It should have sunk, but it didn't. It didn't do that because the guys were on the ship praying, and it didn't do that. And for 3 days, this thing made it back to port. That's what is that? They didn't even notice the crack because it didn't go down. And as soon as it got to port, guess what happened? Down she went. And they had to bring out the little undersea pieces, and the welders did their thing. But I've seen too many things where science has been dumped on its head. There's also an observation with a lot of the folks in the ISS. Any astronaut that's been up there, they won't talk about it, but they know physics does not hold up. And that's not based on man. That's not based on anybody's timing or anything else. That's based upon a power nobody understands. They know this. They know this. So when it comes to the end times, I am a stern believer that the end times, the clock of the end times, is the intent of humanity. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
But there's even a scripture that supports it. It says, God's not slack concerning his promises as men count slackness, but as long suffering to usward. So that means he puts up with us. That doesn't mean he's going to hold off everything until I get my life right.
No,
the
that's
intention
right.
of mankind, God will give us favorable conditions. If we are wise, we will utilize those favorable conditions to get our act together. If we don't, well, we just missed it. He may do it once, he may do it twice, he may do it 3 times. But we know there's a time when it won't happen. And it gives us the indicators. When iniquity abounds. And what do we have in the earth right now?
Oh,
iniquity is all over the place.
Everywhere,
right?
everywhere.
Pastor Paul, in the last 20 years, I have never seen the Christian community as angry as I've seen them.
That's right.
I've also have not seen level-headed, right, political individuals, I'll say, lose their level-headedness.
Oh, my.
I've never seen such filth, right?
Never.
In houses of government in a land declared to be dedicated to the living God, where all men, in the eyes of God and in the eyes of man, through democracy will be upheld as being equal. I've never seen that turned on its head and redefined.
No.
Right? So all these things are steps away from the living God. It is no longer peaceful to go out into the street and say, I love you, Jesus. It's no longer favorable. It's no longer favorable.
You can't do it.
And then the adoption of all, it seems like everybody in this world, the adoption of all this new stuff, because God makes us in a specific way. Man is taking control of himself in a different way and following a different path. I've never seen that pushed, right? Now, what that means is all of us have we're born with a type rebelliousness, right? But normally that rebelliousness goes away. Why? Because we have elders that say, hey, that's not a good route to go.
Get in line.
You don't have it now. You know what they're saying? Oh, good. I'm happy for you. What? They're encouraging it.
Mike,
and so as they do this, of course, things are going to fall apart worse than what people know.
You're so right. You know, we're to a point now where everything goes. If it feels good, it must be good. There is no elders no more pointing things out and saying, hey, get yourself in line. Get yourself together. That isn't how we act. You know, I mean, because now if you're a parent and you're trying to discipline a child, they'll sue you, or the ACL will sue you, ACLU or somebody else. And so what's happening is the fiber of the world is falling apart. It's like it's an infection. It's a contagion of sin, and it's just running rampant. And there's no respect anymore. I think that's what I'm hearing you say. There's absolutely no respect, and that's exactly what the Bible said would happen in the last days. I think when you mentioned there a second ago how that man has lost almost like he's lost his reasoning. Is I know sin does that to people, but is there something else? Is there something? Are they using weapons against us, or is there some kind of food we're eating? Is there something happening? Maybe it's from Planet X, the pressure. What's going on, Mike? Why are people losing their reasoning?
Pastor Paul's about to get a lot worse. You asked me one time. You said, "What is the number one thing in your mind that you're troubled about concerning all these things that are coming?" You remember that one day I said, humanity is how they think, how they operate. As right now, we're going through something called, well, I'm going to call it what it is. It's going to sound nuts. We're going through a time distortion. And you'd have to understand what time is, right? Time is for us. Time is not for anybody. It's not for God. It's not for angels. It's for us, right? We live in we're not in the eternal realm. They are. Time is for us. And by the way, there are too many things published about time and about little experiments that would just blow your mind that actually happened, but it's just not, in this day and age, it's no big deal anyway. But with these distortions in time, which are highly electromagnetic, right?
Did you say, wait a minute, are you saying we're timeless? Or there's
time distortions, meaning there's a physical phenomenon taking place, right? A physical phenomenon.
Okay.
Notice this outside of chipsets. Intel was one of the first people that noticed, because they have to have these clocks in these devices. In every computer chip, right, has a clock in it. Has a clock. That clock has to be precise. And that clock has to be synchronized with other clocks. So it has to be precise. Everything works by clock. But, and that clock used to be solid. But about 10 years ago, it began to change. In fact, the timing of quartz, it began to change. So there is a physical phenomenon, but it also, they know now is it's also in the realm where you can't see, meaning it's dealing with magnetics. It deals with EMF waves and all these different things and frequencies. I know that everybody thinks that 5G is an issue, but you have to remember something. We've been hit by bursts that would take any type of EMF device and blow it up in people's hands, and it did not affect the soul. Right?
Whoa!
God didn't make us vulnerable to what He made us capable of utilizing and equipping, because His children are still here. So we know He's not going to do that. However, there are collective things we have done which have caused some real damage. There are collective things we've done. This time problem, this thing we're going through, is altering everybody's minds.
Is time getting faster? I mean, literally?
That's going to be a physical. I believe that will be a physical effect, Pastor Paul. I do believe that. I believe that for very good reason, but I believe that. I also believe that Earth is going to change its rotation soon. I believe that also. But time, I believe, time being something, if time were to speed up, but all of us stayed in sync with that, speeding up of time, none of us would perceive it.
Right.
Which is why there's consensus that we're having time distortions. Meaning, suppose a person is walking across the street.
Okay.
In traffic, and something hits them, but instead of hitting them, they pass right through it. But they're not aware that there was any traffic. Then they get to the other side, and the truck that hit them is coming down the street, right? And they can somehow see themselves getting hit by a truck, but nothing happened to them, and everybody else sees it too, right? But these are things that they will distort reality, right? So time itself probably won't hold up due to these fluctuations in stability of the heavens. You read something out of the Bible, the powers of heaven shall be shaken.
Yeah, be shaken.
Right? Shall be shaken.
Yeah.
Now, think of this. If the powers of heaven are going to be shaken then, right?
Yeah.
What are they now? If they're shaken then, now that word, when it says the powers of heaven shall be shaken, when you shake somebody up, you destabilize them, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You destabilize them. The powers of heaven will be destabilized, meaning some of the rule sets, some of the things that govern motion, inertia, for example, all these things will begin to change. That the they won't hold up like they used to. It's kind of like why they really won't let anybody go to Antarctica in certain places. Because if people found out what's affecting our weather systems for real, they fall to their knees. Well, some of them would just do something else. But what I'm saying is that there are elements of the earth that scientists they pulled the wool over people's eyes, and a lot of people believe it. But think of it this way. Every condition on this planet is managed very closely. Nothing is out of control, but everything will be out of control shortly. That means something is keeping these forces in check.
Okay, right? Now so that's where you're getting.
Think of a decree from God who says something, man will not, he's not going to jump up and fly away. So that's a decree. That means gravity's in effect.
Right. It's a law. It's a biblical law.
He puts something over that law to watch out for that law everywhere. But then imagine a day when he says release it. We can release it. No longer will it be bound that way. That means the unbelievable will begin to happen. And what I mean by that is with the change of these things will come a change in our perception. That will be the time when people attempt to commit suicide, but they will not be able to. That will be the time when men fall over dead from what they're seeing, because they'll see a lot. And this perception is already beginning to change. The nature of people is changing. It's changing all over the world. And violence is a result of this. We're not just talking about ordinary violence either. Not some argument, but violence. There are stories of things that happened this week. Nobody would ever say them on air unless they were heartless.
Right.
We're talking about upstanding people all of a sudden changing and never going back to normal. Doing a deed and then they don't remember what they did.
It's like there's no more filters. It's like people say things or do things now that you wouldn't even hardly think of before. Now they just blurt it out or they actually go do it. So you're saying time is being distorted, reasoning is being distorted, perceptions are being distorted, the truth is being distorted. All of this is a part of it's not an altering universe. It's not like we're going into another dimension, but it has a veil been opened. When I read in the Bible, Mike, when it talks about Apollyon or Abaddon, it's the angel with the bottomless keys, the bottomless pit. He releases something. Well, for him to release something, God had to lift his hand, because as long as God's law of resistance is in play, none of these things can actually manifest. What you're saying is, at some point, God lifts his hand and hell breaks loose. Is that what I'm hearing?
Those things will be loosed, because he also tells them not to hurt any green thing, anybody with the seal of God on their forehead. So they're not meant to torment the good. They're meant to torment the evil.
Right.
When God sets them, when this declaration goes forth, anybody who's not covered, right? They're gonna seek death and won't find it.
Yeah.
Meaning playtime is done for at that point. But before that time, Pastor Paul, the nature of people will change. A brother will turn and kill their brother. People will turn on each other. And I love the book of Proverbs. Is it Proverbs or Psalms? It's one of the two. It says, when iniquity flourishes like grass, it says the brutish man does not understand. Neither a fool doesn't understand it either. But when iniquity flourishes like grass, it is because it's going to be removed forever. So this is a one-time deal, just like Sodom and Gomorrah. At the height of their iniquity, they were destroyed, but God's people were delivered. So for us, it's a time of deliverance.
It's
right?
The same day as they left out of Sodom. Right.
There you go. So it'll be deliverance and destruction the same day. But there's a troubling scripture from Christ. Okay. Something that it really gets me. Jesus said, a lot of people have likened this one way, but it's in Matthew. It's in the book of Matthew, and it says, they were buying and selling, marrying and giving into marriage until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, a lot of people have read that and said, yes, it's going to be like the days of the Nephilim, like days of old. Okay, but fine, but we're right there with that. And people are working in the Nephilim right now. Yeah. The part that got me was this: how could they not know it was the coming of the Son of Man? I'll tell you why. They stepped away from faith. Now listen, this means that we're still reading the Bible. right? But they stepped away from faith. They were still holding, church and doing all this stuff, but they stepped away from faith. What they did was conventionalize everything. For example, the days we live in right now, right? The supernatural component, what people call supernatural, I can tell you now, to some folks, it's not supernatural. It's a day-to-day thing, right? It's something they have to go through. They have to experience. But when it's unleashed upon the world, when things don't go according to calculated endings, right? When the nature of a person changes, just like their looks change, right? I mean, their physical looks are altered. Well, if they were to change that way, that would send everybody on their heads, right? Yeah. Well, this time will unfold. It will unfold. Why do you think everybody, since, the UFO subject, Pastor Paul, is very, very seducing subject, is very interesting subject to a lot of people. Right. But what's happening is this. While people are trying to find out what they are, right, they're also building within themselves a desire to see what's on the other side. This curiosity is an invitation.
Well, there's a scripture, Apostle Paul said, they're ever learning, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Okay, professing themselves to be wise, they've become fools. So aren't we living in that time where we seem to be, we're getting weaker and wiser, but we learning it. We learn everything. We know nothing. That's kind of what's happening.
That's the part, Pastor Paul, stepping away from keeping everything we have, but stepping away from faith, meaning we're not waiting on God's revelation, right?
Right.
We're trying to beat him to it, but we're trying to beat him to it. So this is going to be troublesome for a lot of people because a lot of people trust in their own output. Like right now, and what was the date? I have some dates I'm looking at, right? April 25th. Let's take April 25th, for example. Right. April 25th, certain policies come out. No doubt it's going to cause some issues, right? But listen to this. Surrounding that date will be a natural disaster. I'm not going to tell you how I know that, but surrounding that date is going to be a natural disaster. Right now, that sounds nuts, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
It's going to be a natural disaster, April 25th, right? So listen, though. If a natural disaster happens surrounding April 25th, how would anybody ever know that, right?
Right.
In the Word of God, with us, with believers, sometimes I know I used to struggle a lot because there was science and there was faith. Right? There was because every time I was introduced to something that people seldom see, it shook everything of science in me. Yeah, it's like, no, I'm not trusting science anymore. Science doesn't explain this. But then you end up resorting back to some sort of a quantitative explanation, meaning you're trying to calculate how this happened. You're trying to put it all in neat categories, right? Well, we're going to find out that you cannot do that. But for a saint, what you can do is wait upon the Lord for revelation. That doesn't mean sit back in a lawn chair and don't do anything until he answers no. That means we trust him to have our outcome, so that if I'm trusting God for my outcome, right, given all of what's coming this summer, that nobody's going to escape, some of the adverse effects and the wind speeds that we're going to encounter will be outrageous. But given half of that stuff, I have to always remember that my protection is of the Lord.
So what you're saying is, Mike, for instance, you just said April 25th, there's going to be a policy change. It's going to affect people. But also, supernaturally, I should say, you may have insight spiritually. Any of us could, where we could get a word of knowledge where, oh, by the way, there's also going to be a natural disaster that day. It could be man created. It could be God created. But sometimes we find out, the Lord shows us, he reveals things to us so that we can be prepared for it. It's not intel. God has intel just like anyone else, right? He gives us through a discernment, through the gift of discernment, the word of knowledge.
That's right.
So we need to listen to God.
What we don't know.
I'm sorry, Mike, you there?
Oh, you still there? Yeah. I was going to say he'll always have us He said he will not have us ignorant concerning the devices of the enemy.
No, that's
he's
right.
always going to put us in the know. That's what prophecy is for, because he tells us what he's going to do, what he is going to. Even if the devil does something, God has to allow him to do it, or he can't do it. Right? Now, having said that, Pastor Paul, how many people have you talked to about these end times for years, right? For a long time.
Right.
For a long time. And they believe in Christ, don't they?
Yeah.
Now, everybody has their own opinion, but collectively, you know what they've been saying? Something is coming that hardly anybody can run from. Something life-altering is coming. It's going to be devastating effects on the earth. This is what they've been saying. You will not be able to rely upon the wisdom of scientists, but you might want to know the truth now so that your soul can be settled, your heart can be settled, your mind can be settled when it comes. I'll tell you right now, for the disaster that's coming, it would have taken us 50 years to prepare. In other words, it would have been smart for our parents to prepare us so that possibly we could be prepared. And I'm saying this because the magnitude of what's coming will overwhelm anybody's preparation. Even those who seek to go into any underground shelters, I'm telling you right now, it's not going to work. Penetration from space, from any large body over a certain size, is going to penetrate 400, 500, 600, 800 feet, 1,000 feet to the earth. Who can escape that? That's molten rock with lava coming up from the bottom, a destabilized core, right? That's too much magma. Too much magma. And it doesn't matter what you put down there. Pressure and magma is going to eat up and just grind away at any structure. That will be like your grave. So there's no preparation for this. There's a knowing of this. There's a trust of God. Now there's being informed about what's going on in society so people do not get duped into following all these crowds and these weird type of belief systems. That's why I'm glad you're around. Because people, they still don't get it, Pastor Paul.
No, they don't. And Mike, you're saying, and you're exactly right. Today I was even saying to people, read Revelation. There's coming deep impacts. Men are going to die because they know what's coming. People are going to, they're going to cry for the rocks and the mountains to hide them from the face of the Lord. It won't work. The judgment of God that's coming, you can't escape. And we have to prepare ourselves for the inevitable by getting things right with God, having faith with Jesus Christ, having a relationship with our fellow man, walking in the peace of God. And folks, you can't escape the prophecies of the last days. Mike, and Mike, is 2021, I'm just going to throw this out there for you. Is this year, are we going to experience something that we never dreamed of? Is this the year? What?
Yeah, we will.
Yes.
And then I think we discussed that before. And then what will the average person do? Now, here's some insight into this, Pastor Paul. Listen, two nights ago, there was a group of folks, a lot of people, right, over a Walmart who had something altering happen to them. We're talking about thousands of people. Right. Thousands.
Over a Walmart?
This same thing. There are right now, there's a group of folks in Nebraska, in Oklahoma, all the way up to Tennessee. They're getting together because they need to handle a situation that nobody else is handling. They're dealing with this thing every single night and sometimes during the daytime. And it's getting out of control. There's another situation in the north. There's some folks who live they're in suburban neighborhoods, but now they're having a problem with where they live. It's actually becoming intrusive. Things are escalating beyond the point of containment. Secrecy is not going to matter soon. I think that everybody is aware of that. And I tell you, when people have their own experiences and it's in their environment, I guarantee you, they're going to come hunt people like you down and say, well, I got a question. What is that? Am I really going to go to hell if I die? Because people will entertain that thought of death. It's a very different thing to talk about something than to enter into it. This time that we're in right now is very deceiving. God has been so good to us, giving us time for preparation, giving us space. We've had relative peace. We've had arguments and talks and riots and things but we've had peace. But I'm talking about something that would, from the outside, threaten the way we live, the way we function, the way we operate. It's like having a nightmare you can't escape. When that takes place, that is life altering. And things will not go back to normal. The Vatican is soon to make an announcement concerning this very subject.
What?
I suspect that will be possibly in a couple of months or something like that, but they're going to make it'll be somewhat of a spiritual emergency announcement. I'll put it that way. They're going to make that announcement. They have no choice. What's building is building. It's not backing down, and all of people's curiosities, right? That's going to be served up with a big heaping platter shortly. Soon enough, they won't be curious. They're going to want answers, right? They're going to want to know. They're going to want to have security in something, because all these things that are forming, right, they're overwhelming. They really are overwhelming. The only safe place that a person can ever have is to have the understanding that their soul is secured in Christ. That's the only place, because I can say the statement too. When it comes to people running around trying to save their flesh, they're going to forget that idea. The changes that we're going to experience will pierce the flesh, and then people will wonder about their own souls at that point. We've not had an element that would threaten the soul of man for a long time, but that these things are forming. They are not nice and, passive and those things. Forget about it. These things are escalating beyond the point of reason, as you discussed before. And it will be good if Christians would really take their salvation seriously. I mean, to the next level, because this is also a moment of great deliverance. Unfortunately, in conventional means, all great moments of deliverances in the Bible came at strenuous times. They came during strenuous times, not times of peace, but strenuous times, very difficult times. But that's the time when people will actually listen, when they won't say, hey, I've got enough money for this, I can just rest on that. When a person has no securities, the very first thing they begin to wonder about is their soul. And they'll say, where am I really going if I die? And see, that time is quickly approaching people. And you know what? This will be short. I promised myself, I guess you could say, I was in a position one time, Pastor Paul, where somebody needed my advice when I was very young. I had nothing to tell them. That broke my heart. I had nothing to tell them. And you know what? A day later, they were dead. But I had nothing to tell them. I went and prayed that night, and I said, Lord, that can never happen again. And so with all this peacetime that we've had, I've taken advantage of it. And because I know a time is coming. I know it's coming. When people will come, and they'll be desperate. And they're going to ask folks, what do I do? What do I do? And you can't, it's not going to be one of those times where you say, well, just go home and pray about it.
No,
Lord, take care of it.
you're going to have an answer.
That's right. And they're going to have to really have a footing in their faith to do this. That time is right around the corner. And this is the buildup, because I'm talking about tons of people they're going to start doing this, Pastor Paul. We'll see society change this way. Hopefully, God's children will have an answer.
Folks, the answer is Jesus Christ. And then, as Mike's saying, the answer, the Lord tells us that he's going to reveal these things to us, but we got to walk in his spirit. We got to walk in the anointing. We got to walk in his love. We got to be listening. We got to be praying. We got to be ready so that we can move and we can lead others, so we can help teach them and help show them the way. Mike, you left me speechless several times tonight, and I can at least say, are you serious? It was that intense, but that's where we're at. And when we talk next Thursday, we'll be on the eve of climate chaos. I'll have to get with you next week, Mike. We got to get you. We got to get you.
I'll send you an email tonight.
Okay.
So
okay.
We'll get those in there.
Oh, that's going to be good, people. You got to get your ticket, Mike. Should they get a ticket for this webinar?
I would. I tell you, I would.
Okay.
I recommend it.
Okay, if Mike recommends it and he would, then you should. Okay, Mike, appreciate it. I'll see you this week. We'll be talking before even next Thursday, and then again we'll see you next Thursday night right here.
All right. God bless you, Pastor Paul.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight. God bless you, brother.
All right.
Mike around the world, folks. He said he would. He would. Why? Because he knows what he's going to share. And tonight he broke some ground. He told us. Yes. I asked him, is there anything going to happen this year that we're not going to hardly believe? He said, yes. He instantly said yes. He didn't want to say what. Maybe I can get that out of him in this interview I'm going to do with him for the webinar. Maybe I can. One thing's for sure. I heard Gil Prezard is thinking this thing could really wind up by April of 2022. Mike around the world saying something before this year's over is going to be very, very intense. He even said next April 25th, there's going to be a policy change that's really going to affect people. And then he said, and a natural disaster will also happen. How does he know? He said, I can't tell you how I know. But then he went on to tell you that God will reveal. Listen. And also, he made the statement tonight. He said, Gil Brazard, God bless him. Very, very impressed with people like Gil who know things without having access to the same equipment and graphics and intel that Mike does have access to.